You know, in our Islamic center, we had a Christian group come from the Episcopalian Church, and we had a nun speak. She came, they observed us saying our prayers, they watched us, and then those men sitting there, she said, "What did you just do? What did you just do?" So I had to explain to them. I said this, now watch this. Look how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this deen so practical that without words, the world is understanding. This in the world means surrender. When a military fights and the enemy gets you, you have no choice but to do this. You watch people who are caught as prisoners of war, they walk like this. When we do this, means I surrender. Allahu Akbar, I'm surrendering. This takbiratul ihram, which is the pillar of salah. You watch the ruku, the genuflection, seeking permission to enter, to go down into prostration. Universal symbols. Watch the prostration of a Muslim. It is second to none. You find people who do prostrations of all types. The Buddhists put their whole stomach on the floor when they bow to the Buddha. You cannot compare it to the ruku, to the sujood of a Muslim. Universal symbol that if you ever saw a man's head on the ground the way it is, that is his position, and that all the Muslims, 2 billion of them, if they were all to say their prayers, they'd all come at the same level. That Allah is saying, you are all one and the same to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this salah is so important to us that its movements are universal. That, and I do the qunut, which is mustahab. You take a photograph of me doing this. You don't have to ask, what was this guy doing? I can tell you he's a beggar. He's begging, for that's a universal symbol again. Every movement in salah, if you look at it, it's a universal symbol, sending a very clear message that that's the action of the man who has understood his reality in the dimension he lives in. And I watch at the airports, when I say my prayer, people are looking at me. See, maybe he's thinking I'm a terrorist, you know, preparing something. But it never happens. You will always find those people smile at you and respect you. And they say, this guy is the one who said his prayers. You know what? Please get on the plane, because I'm sure there's something with you. This plane ain't going down. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. As a final point, without going too far, when we do our prayers, those of us who follow the Ja'fari school of thought, the way of Ahlul Bayt, we use these rocks, you know, these mud things that we bow on. Now, we've been accused that we're worshiping it. Common accusation, isn't it? It's throwing mud, you know, without using the pun, of course. People say, oh, you pray on this Turbah, you are, why do you do this? You're worshiping it. I asked my brothers who accused me of that, I said, you say I'm worshiping it? He said, yeah, that's worshiping it. I said, show me in the human race of people who worship idols, do they ever place their idols under their head? Have you ever seen a Hindu worship his God? He would not dare put his head on the idol. When you worship an idol, the idol is in front of you and you lower your head. So if I am worshiping the Turbah, which is under my head, which is nonsensical, which is preposterous, then the argument goes, okay, so I'm worshiping this stone, you're worshiping the carpet. Isn't that true? Better yet, you're worshiping the earth. Now you become pantheistic. It's common sense that that's not the reality. That's throwing unnecessary mud. I was in Saudi Arabia, I was in Medina, at the Masjid Saba Saba, you know, where the Battle of Khandaq took place. And I had a musalla with a straw mat. You know, it was a straw mat, and I was keeping it down, saying my prayers. A whole group of us were there. And this man comes with his son. You know, he's got an attitude problem, number one, but no problem. He's saying to his son, he said, these people, these are not Muslims. This is all bid'ah, bid'ah, bid'ah. This is haram, haram. So I said my prayers and I looked at him and my tongue was itching. He says, but be careful, you are in no man's land. So he says, bid'ah. I said, what do you mean? What do you mean bid'ah? He says, this is haram, what are you doing? I said, really haram? I said, who told you it's haram? He said, hey, this is nowhere in Sharia. I said, yeah, have you read the Sahih of Muslim, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through His Prophet, is teaching us how to say our prayers, that when he walks out of the masjid, he has mud on his forehead, and he says, all those of you who follow me, make sure that when you do sajda, there is mud on your forehead. He says, we have read everything. I said, you haven't read that one. So I said, since you are so learned and since you are so quick in judging the whole world about how haram and halal everything is, tell me why in every salah there are 2 sujuds? And he looks at me, he says, what do you mean? I said, you know, have you noticed? Sunni and Shia, in every rak'ah, compulsory, you have 2 sajdas, not more, not less. He looked at me. He says, I don't know, you know, tell me, brother. I said, oh, you call me brother now. Before I was nobody. I said, my Prophet tells me, he said, the first sajda is that you come from earth. And Allah raises you from this earth, you mud creature, you Bani Adam. And you will live in this world, then you will die and go back into the earth, and that is your second sajda. And Allah will raise you on the day of judgment, and that is when you rise from your second sajda, and Allah promises that you will never go back into this earth. That's why there are only 2 sujuds in every salah. And thus Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through His Prophet tells us that when you do sajda, make sure there is earth between your forehead, for that is one of the positions that you are exemplifying. That when you come from the first sajda to the second, what do? We do astaghfirullah rabbi wa atubu ilayh, which is mustahab to do. We don't even have to do it. But you notice the movement between the 2 sajdas, that is this whole world. How quick it is in movement. But it is mustahab that when you rise from the first sajda, you say, astaghfirullah rabbi wa atubu ilayh. Then you go to the second sajda, implying as a daily message for you that, oh mankind, while you live in this world, you better do nothing but seek forgiveness. And the man literally was trembling, talking to me. He said, tell me more. I said, for your information, what we use in this Turbah is by the prescription of our Holy Prophet. It is forbidden for us to introduce new innovations into our prayers when it is not given as an injunction from our Prophet, who we pivot around. That he has taught us this. There is value. You can use this. I can go outside on the streets and use sand as my bowing ground. Anything that is earthly, which is not to be consumed, and that which you do not wear is what you will use for your sajda. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to do that as a compulsory factor, to enact that when you're going to that second sajda, remember that's when you die and go into the earth. It's a remembrance. It's a reminder. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.